Welcome to the Carpal Tunnel questions and responses. Question 1 from Detail for You. Great video as always. I have a pinched nerve on the left side of my neck. What percentage chances that this caused my carpal tunnel? Near 100%. Unless there's a direct fall on the wrist, everything else is beginning in the neck. I've had carpal tunnel for about 1.5 years. My pinched nerve occurred about 50 years or so ago. Thanks. So when you're looking at this, a pinched nerve, obviously there's going to be a muscle imbalance of the form that's a contributing factor. There can be direct traumas on it. There could be a lot of different biomechanics during the day of resting it or having it bent or turned or twisted. But that cervical spine is going to be one of the biggest factors. And it was not one trauma 50 years ago. I'm telling you right now, that's why we need to look at the entire structure. And I mean looking at the pelvis, the low back, looking at the mid back, because if there was a deviation like this and a pinched nerve in the neck, you've got to correct everything. And knowing that there's 18 muscles that hold that shoulder girdle on that thoracic area, if there is structural deviations there, that's going to contribute to an adaptive muscle spasm or a riding reflex. So you've got to look at the entire structure first. Then it's not just one trauma 50 years ago. That's why you want to get a static x-ray and a stress x-ray to see if those joints are still mobile, if they can be corrected. But looking at the entire structure first, and then look at sleep patterns, look at the muscle imbalance of the forearm, do all of those cool exercises, and you will find the solution. Even if there's near fusion because the neck was never adjusted, you can still de-stress that area out by correcting the thoracic area. There's always something you can do. Question 2 from Lakota 7500. I had the surgery done. Now I have a ball. I have like a ball where my fourth finger is, and I can't spread my hand, but my fourth finger wants to stay to my middle finger, and it's on my right hand. Then there's like a puff next to it that's full of some kind of fluid. It doesn't hurt right now, but it's not really functioning properly. What should I do? Oh, brother or sister. It's a nightmare. Okay, when you look at the palm, and this is a surgical term. It's called surgical no man's land. We're right through this area here. This area, surgical no man's land. And any work done on that area, there's so many tendons that the scar tissue will create more problems. Now, having the surgery done means that they worked on the hand, and that's where you're having some problems with the hand. But remember, carpal tunnel is a double crush injury. It begins in the neck, leads to the wrist, unless there's some weird falling on the wrist, and that's the only thing that happened, which is highly doubtful. So get to a good chiropractor that's going to take static and stress x-rays of the cervical spine, thoracic spine, and lumbar spine to make sure that the entire structure is good. And if there is forward head carriage, just think of it. It's like a tourniquet on the arm. That means that you've got compromised blood supply and compromised nerve supply to it. So it won't heal. So you've got to look at the original cause, which is more than likely coming from the cervical, possibly thoracic spine, and all of that could be an adaptation to past lumbar trauma. So look at the entire structure first, and then you can start working on the hand. So once you get that nerve supply to it, and this works on Dupuytren's contractures, it works on all kinds of pathology, but you've got to restore the nerve supply. Then remember, you got a muscle imbalance. Flexors versus extensors should be a 5-to-4 strength ratio. So that's going to be a contributing factor. And then you can actually work those tissue, because that scar tissue that forms in that hand post-surgery, you can start to break up those adhesions. But when you do break up those adhesions, put moist heat on it afterwards, hot, wet cloths, because you want to break that tissue up. That's going to create inflammation. The moist heat is going to increase the lymph flow and also help with macrophage activity. And these are cells going to chew up abnormally placed proteins. And you're going to start to notice an increase in function. Then work the extensors, work the flexors, but you've got to get that forward head carriage and cervical component corrected first. Question 3 from the Masand 798. What about the ulnar nerve and elbow and wrist on the same arm as carpal tunnel? I just had the ulnar nerve at the wrist and elbow released, painful, 20 years prior to medium nerve released in the carpal tunnel palm, 5 huge incisions. Oh, it's a nightmare. Well, let's look at this, okay? Because if carpal tunnel, you're looking at over a 97% rate, it's a double crush injury. So knowing that you've got compromised nerve supply in the neck, okay, or there's forward head carriage, or there's a structural deviation, you got to look at the structure first. Number one. Then, knowing that the ulnar, just look at the form. You've got flexors on one side, extensors on the other. And those flexors, typically it should be a 5-to-4 ratio. If they're not, then it's going to kick that ulnar over to the medial aspect, entrapping that ulnar nerve. But also just resting your arm. Look at resting your arm on a car or desk, or look at the biomechanics there. But ultimately, you're looking at a double crush injury beginning in the neck, leading to the dysfunction of that area. So the surgery to do that carpal tunnel release, where they're cutting the flexor retinaculum, that's not addressing what the problem is. And it's not repetitive motion. It's a muscle imbalance from a secondary problem of the compromised nerve supply or forward head carriage. So you've got to look at the neck and thoracic and lumbar spine first, then get to a qualified chiropractor to check the position of that ulnar bone in the elbow. It's more than likely medially deviated, so it has to be set back in place. There may be a radial head that's also an issue. For sure, there's going to be a muscle imbalance, but you correct all of that, then the body has the best chance of regenerating. And anywhere they did the surgery, there could be scar tissue there. That's why I recommend moist heat over post-surgery, and that will help restore the lymph flow and restore macrophage activity to chew up those abnormally placed proteins. Because the way the body works is anytime there's trauma, the body doesn't want that area injured again, so it lays down a scar tissue, and that can limit motion and limit function, but it's a protective mechanism of the body. That's why, like, anytime you break a bone, baby, that bone that's heals is stronger than the surrounding bone. Question 4 from Cherry Blizzard 9585. Broke my neck 54 years ago. My nerves are pinched and my hands are weak and painful. Do you think surgery would help? Surgery is the last option. Surgery does not realign. Okay, now breaking your neck means that you have a structural problem, not just of the neck. Okay, anybody that has that big of a trauma, there's going to be some other components. So you got to get a full set of x-rays of the lumbar, the pelvis, the thoracic, the cervical spine, stress x-rays, because if there is a structural deviation and they operate in an area that doesn't realign the body, so their problem is still going to be there. If you have forward head carriage and they do an operation on it, the head doesn't get repositioned. And if your head is forward, and that's what usually happens in some type of a trauma, there's going to be a loss of curve, reversal of the curve, throwing that head forward. You cannot recover that nerve supply in there. They're going to do a release, they're going to do microsurgery, they're going to do fusion, they're going to do something, but it's not going to correct that forward head carriage. And surgery cannot be undone, although I have sent several patients to get plates removed and, some steel rods removed that weren't necessary. But surgery, when they go in and do fusion, they're not realigning the body. So do I think surgery would help? Surgery is the last option. It's like going after mosquitoes with a shotgun. Will the shotgun kill mosquitoes? Yeah, but it could damage a lot of the surrounding structures. It's the last option. Thank God it's there for some, but you've got to get to a good chiropractor that's going to take static and stress x-rays to assess if it is possible to get it corrected. But the site of the damage, the site of the neck, I guarantee you that is not the only part that's going on with the body. You've got to look at the entire structure, plus your body for a half a century has adapted to that trauma. So we have got to look at everything. look at every aspect, and hopefully surgery can be avoided. Question 5 from Silifton. Dr. B, will reflexology massage help with any of these issues? Reflexology is amazing, okay? And I'm really familiar with the reflexology of the foot. And anytime you're getting those points, there's an electrical and chemical change in the brain. And anytime you're working those tissues, you can alter that brain's view of its position in space or proprioception. So you're going to help. You can help with autonomic function. That's going to be fantastic. You can do direct massage on here. But it's still, when you're looking at carpal tunnel, you got to address the cervical spine. And reflexology is fantastic for the whole body. It will not realign the spine. So you've got to identify the problem. And reflexology as an adjunct is going to be fantastic. But if you're not addressing the forward head carriage or loss of curve, it won't work. But I'm a big fan of it. Now, if your question wasn't answered here, post or look for your questions on the Dr. B VIP site where I can talk freely. So please share these answers and questions, and God bless you all. Stay healthy, my friends.